Time to cut the BS and address the elephant in the room. The tragic shooting at a Minneapolis Catholic school and church feels eerily similar to the shooting at Covenant Christian School here in Nashville a couple years ago in more ways than one. I'm not so sure those crying out for help thinking they were born in the wrong body should be primarily affirmed of that like it's the solution. Perhaps this is a social contagion worth addressing a little better. Maybe the left is right. Maybe thoughts and prayers aren't quite enough. All right, so first and foremost, our hearts break for the children, the victims, their families, and the entire Minneapolis community. You suffered an unspeakable tragedy, and no amount of political quarterbacking or pontificating is going to change that reality for you. I'm so sorry you're going through this, and you shouldn't have to. No one should. The Nashville community experienced something eerily similar in March of 2023, and I mean eerily similar. We never really got the full story out of that tragedy and what motivated it, though thanks to leaks and citizen journalism, we pieced a lot of it together, and it was horrifying. The Nashville shooter was also a young, unhappy, confused, and deeply disturbed human who slaughtered young Christian kids in cold blood. Her name was Audrey Hale, though she started going by the name Aiden in the years leading up to the school shooting and started identifying as a man. Audrey Hale's manifesto revealed that she specifically targeted white kids who she deemed to have white privilege. Much of the mainstream media chose not to give that much coverage. I wonder why. But now, just a couple years later, and this time in Minneapolis, we have a shockingly similar backdrop unfolding. The now deceased suspect, Robin Westman, was born Robert Westman, and from what's been uncovered thus far, suffered some pretty extreme mental issues. So yeah, we're going to have that conversation, because while folks like Jen Psaki and Maxwell Frost seem to think this tragedy is Trump's fault or the gun's fault, I happen to think there's a much larger discussion here that needs to be had surrounding mental health, and specifically trans mental health. I'm not so sure those crying out for help thinking they were born in the wrong body should be primarily affirmed of that like it's the solution. We don't know why the monster did what he did. Only he knows that, and he's not around anymore to tell us. But I will say, if these young people like Robert or Audrey are that angry at that young age and that hell-bent on murdering innocent children, something along the way fell through a big, giant crack. And with 2.8 million Americans now self-reporting to be transgender, perhaps this is a social contagion worth addressing a little better. Maybe the left is right. Maybe thoughts and prayers aren't quite enough. Joining me now is host of the Determined Society, Shawn French. Shawn, it's great to have you. Now, typically, you and I discuss things like masculinity and other, social issues or social constructs. I don't think this is outside of those bounds, though. We look at this horrible tragedy. A lot of people, making it political on the left and the right, and we hope not to do that. But I do think now that we have another situation with a young person who is transgender, deeply disturbed, has these manifestos, it feels like maybe this is something else worth addressing.
Yeah. Hey, Tommy, this thing is sad either way you slice it. It doesn't matter who did it, why they did it. The fact of the matter is that 2 children are dead and potentially more could have been harmed. The fact that we're talking about mental illness and mental health, this is something that wide ranges of people go through, right? But for what you're talking about specifically, the perpetrator, what did transition to a woman, I would have to think there was a lot of things going on there that they were very unhappy about, right? A lot of trauma, a lot of things that they were really struggling with, and then did it lead to something like this? Quite possibly, right? At the end of the day, though, the main push needs to be how we keep these kids safe. I mean, how are we scared to take our kids to school? How does this happen? This should be the one place that children are safe and parents are free from the burden of, do I get to pick my kid up today? Because for the fact is, 2 sets of parents don't get to do that today or yesterday or for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, fortifying the school environment, the church environment is definitely something worth discussing and addressing. But from what it sounds like from the investigation, this monster shot through windows. So, yeah, of course, having somebody on the perimeter would have been a great
Mm-hmm.
deterrent. I'd even say for as much talk as there is right now about how we shouldn't be having National Guard around, I'll tell you, if Minneapolis possibly had some more security, some more people in these areas, I'm not saying specifically National Guard, but if you've got people out there, it's going to serve as a deterrent. However, we're not going to stop all of these. You can put,
No.
officers as many places. These kind of things are unfortunately still going to happen from time to time, although I agree we could do a much better job. My thing about it is, though, and I think we have to be careful with the way that we talk about this, and I think sometimes the narrative gets a little misconstrued. I want to make it clear. I don't think that everybody who identifies as transgender is at risk of shooting up a school. I don't believe that. I don't think that's the case at all. However, I think that there is something worth discussing here when you've got somebody who clearly has mental issues, that clearly has some deep-seated anger, rage, whatever it might be, and then that person maybe is seen by a medical or psychiatric professional, and then that professional affirms, oh, you're born in the wrong body, that's what it is, or let's put you on some medication to address that, let's put you on hormones. And we don't know the specifics of this case, but I'm just saying bigger picture here. I think when we talk about mental health, it's like, well, we need to remove the stigma, but we also need to address how mental health is being addressed. And I think that's a much bigger discussion here. It doesn't mean everybody that goes through this pipeline is going to shoot up a school. Of course not. But are people falling through the cracks even when they are seeking help for mental health? Is the treatment itself maybe part of the problem?
Well, thank you for that clarification. And I agree 100% with you, right? The fact of the matter is this individual was struggling with something, and there's many people who struggle with things that do horrific things. The main go-to with treatment is always SSRIs. Put people on SSRIs, let's numb them up, and they put them on 1,000 different things, and then nobody knows what's actually helping. Nobody knows if they remove something, there's 5 more drugs that these young individuals and sometimes adults are on, so we don't know what is what. We can't determine what's helping and what's actually harming, right? But the other side of it is, Tomi, is that's the treatment usually.
Yeah.
The SSRIs. And then the therapy goes out the window. The conversations stop at home. Children are stuck in their rooms going down the rabbit hole of ChatGPT and doom scrolling all day. That doesn't help the case.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up, medications, and there's a variety of things to discuss. I think part of it, the hormone blockers, puberty blockers, certain things that are associated with gender affirming trans care. I think that's one bucket that definitely needs more research. We don't know how this impacts the adolescent mind. That's one thing. But then the other thing you mentioned, like these antidepressants and all this. And, RFK Jr., HHS Secretary RFK Jr., he's been speaking out about this. I saw some members of Congress tweeting with profanities that, Kennedy is wrong about this and F this, F that, and it's the guns and all this. I saw those tweets on my X feed today. But I think what he's trying to address here is actually very important, and it goes to exactly what you said. If, a kid is experiencing something in adolescence and they've got blues or they've got anxiety or they've got, depression, and throwing them on a medication instead of addressing the underlying issues, I think that that's a big problem. And a lot of parents, they do it thinking that they're helping, but I wonder if it's causing more harm than help in some of these situations.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that scares me, and you brought up a good point, right? Because when parents go and do this, and I'm not saying every parent, but if you go and get your child help and they put them on a medication, some parents can automatically think, okay, this is going to be the Pangea. This is going to cure everything for my child. And the reality is they may lose sight of it a little bit. Not every parent, but some parent may lose sight of it and think that the SSRI is doing the job. That is only part of the equation. That is only part of it. It is so scary. And you mentioned, the guns, the everything. Like there's a person on the other end of the trigger.
Right.
Okay. Just like it's not the donut's fault if someone eats 15 donuts a day and they gain 10 pounds a month. It's not the donut. It's what's going on behind that donut. What is that person's mindset? Now, we're comparing two completely different things. I realize that. But, the gun and the donut are both inanimate objects.
Well, I want to talk about this too, because there's a debate in left-wing and right-wing circles about red flag laws, and people are saying we need red flag laws. Well, I would point out that Minnesota does have red flag laws. So how did this person fall through the cracks? We're still getting more information. The investigation is going to be ongoing. We know that about how the firearms were obtained and all this. But from what I'm at least hearing is that it was legally obtained firearms. But then I think that begs the question, if this person's got a YouTube channel, which we're seeing bits and pieces of, and manifestos that are, horrible and atrocious, did the parents not see that? Nobody saw that. YouTube didn't flag that. I mean, and again, a lot of this is, we don't have confirmation on a lot of this material, if it's in fact from the shooter and all that. But from what we're seeing, there was some disturbing stuff that was put online. I don't know about you, Shawn, but during the COVID era, our YouTube would get flagged if I talked about vaccines, right? So I'm wondering if someone can put out this horrible, awful, demonic stuff, nobody flagged this? I'm thinking that's
an interesting.
Yeah, will more gun laws solve this though? Because you had a red flag law in Minnesota, and this person didn't trip it. So, what do we do?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good question, because you talk about YouTube and you talk about how come it's not getting flagged, how come the video is not getting taken down. Where are the parameters here? I mean, just like you, I have videos flagged all the time for shot content, and it's just someone talking about their story. So you're going to flag someone talking about their story on my show on how they overcame addiction and drug abuse, and we're going to let this other material fly. Now, here's an interesting thing. What if whoever they are, this stuff sells, Tommy, right? So if people are fighting and there's division, like that sells. And that's unfortunate, because there's lives at stake. These social media platforms are not stopping the hate content. They are suppressing the good message, and they're pouring gasoline and throwing a book of matches on the content and the types of influencers or people that can make a very, very bad, I guess, impression on society. And this is what we're looking at.
Yeah. It's hard because you got to weigh free speech with, the public good and all that. And I'm a free speech absolutist. And I'm not saying people shouldn't be able to say what they want to say, even if it's ugly and disgusting, but maybe someone keep track of it. And to me, this goes back again to the parents. Now, I'm one of those people, if you've got, a child that lives with you, or even if they're an adult child and they live with you, and you think they could be a harm to themselves or others, I think there needs to be more like public pressure on parents to do a better job. And I think a lot of people, especially in the wake of something like this, they think, you didn't notice this, like this didn't, pique your interest whatsoever, that this person wanted to now all of a sudden be Robin and, is acting in this way kind of underneath your nose. This didn't, set off any kind of an alarm bell for you. That to me is hard to believe.
It's hard for me to believe too, Tommy, to be honest with you, because, I have 3 children, as you know, and my wife and I consistently have our pulse on our children. We know their demeanors. We know their happy modes. We know when they're triggered by something. We know when they're going down a road that we don't want them to go down. So we have these open conversations. Now, my children are younger, right? They're not running rampant on the internet yet. They're not on YouTube. We're not allowing that, right? But we know without a shadow of a doubt when something is going on with our children, just down to the point where if my 6-year-old says, I have a tummy ache, well, then I know she's anxious about something. I know I need to talk to her and empower her. So, in this case, I don't know how it wasn't, I guess any type of like, hey, this could be a risk. I have a hard time believing that, but I don't want to sit there and say exactly what happened in that home, because that wouldn't be fair. But I venture to say that, under my roof, if my kids are acting a certain way, my wife and I are going to know about it. And if they're putting certain content out there, because we do monitor devices, then we'll know exactly. I know where my son clicks. I know how many times he clicks on a game to the second. And I know how long he's been on that site, and we shut it down, right? There has to be some measures. There has to be active parenting. See, parenting is great, but parenting doesn't mean you have kids and then you just have kids. No, you need to be involved. And I'm not saying the parents weren't involved, but I mean, that poor lady worked at that school.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, there's a lot of emotion in this, but the fact of the matter is there had to have been some telltale signs. Had to have been.
Yeah. Yeah. And we don't know everything, but When you've got children that are dead, and I think we want to be sensitive to those families.
Yeah.
But also, we need to have a discussion, because if your kid is going out and doing this, I think some of it has to come back to the home. It has to be like, okay, so what went wrong here? I think we need to learn from it too. It's just like we learn from, soft targets and how you need to fortify a school or a church. I think we need to learn too from patterns of behavior, because every time we have one of these monsters go shoot up a school, we look back and it's like, well, there was a lot of signs here. Nobody caught this, right? I don't understand how that went. I want to kind of turn the page slightly here. You brought up ChatGPT and you brought up AI, and this is obviously unrelated entirely to Minneapolis, but I think it's still part of a larger discussion. And that's what ChatGPT and other AI, they're interacting with young people. We got a report as well that a couple weeks ago, that AI, Meta AI, the way that Meta AI was interacting with minors was actually really sexual in nature and kind of disgusting. That was flagged. And apparently, up until it was flagged, that was kind of written into the program that it was acceptable. And then you've got this with ChatGPT, this being sued by a number of parents now, but you've got a teen who is suicidal, interacted with ChatGPT, and come to find out, allegedly, ChatGPT was actually encouraging the suicide and encouraging this teen to kind of cover up these ideations of suicide. I think this is only going to get worse if the computer becomes your friend and we don't know what that computer is saying. I think this is going to be really, really dark in a few years.
This one's scary, Tomi. I read that article and I've been paying attention to this. There was moments there where the chat bot would say, hey, if you want to, I'm here for you. If you want to talk, we can go deeper on this and we can get you help. But I mean, there needs to be safeguards there. There needs to be some flags within that program, right? To OpenAI, that when someone is typing this type of stuff, they can find out where this IP address is coming from, can't they? Like get someone some help. This particular case, this young man was going down the rabbit hole of, hey, how does this not look? Can it suspend a human? That is mortifying just to even read, much less be the parent that finds their son in a closet. I mean, but at the same time, this is a computer. I want everybody to understand, it's a chat bot. It does not have any feelings. It doesn't. It goes off the prompts and kind of learns your behaviors, learns the things you talk about. But I also think in this instance, if this is going on and people are planning their suicides, then there needs to be some safety measures within this platform. If they can make this thing talk to you and be like the ultimate Google superhuman, then it can surely trigger a warning to the authorities that someone is planning to kill themselves.
Yeah, and again, a lot of it goes back to the parents, and it's so hard because there's so much out there. Like, how do you shield a teen from everything out there? I don't know if you necessarily can with the way that things are going. No. I think for me too, this just goes back to, I think this generation was so impacted by COVID, and they were conditioned to stay online and to stay with their screens. Your screens are your friend. Screens are safety. People are dangerous. They might give you COVID. Don't interact with people, and definitely don't interact with a lot of people. Just stay with your screen. Your beloved screen will keep you safe. That's how a lot of these people grew up with COVID. And now, lo and behold, they're still addicted to the screen, and the screen is still their best friend, and screen is safety, and humans are danger. So there are some humans that are danger, but I think young people need to be interacting with other young people. And I think that 5 years from now, you're going to have people that just have full-on relationships with computers, and they can't talk to other humans. I know that you talk about this a lot. I mean, what can be done about this?
It's hard because there has to be safety measures and there has to be some guardrails put up. But to sit there and say we can thwart it or end it, we can't. It's here. It's gonna get just even crazier. AI is going to get even better. I mean, heck, there's many of the Instagram accounts that we probably see, on our platforms. They're not even real people. They're AI generated. That's scary. That is very scary, right? Think of a young man or a young woman interacting with somebody on social media that's not real, but there's this creepy person behind it that's just going to meet up with them and potentially kill them. It's scary, so as we move into that era of computer screen, right? And yes, it was kicked off with COVID, right? Everything was done. My son was in kindergarten at that point in time. He was doing distance learning. He got used to that computer. Now, in this amazing school that he's in, everything is posted to a certain website that they study from. Everything is done through a dang computer. Everything. He came home. He's like, Dad, I got a quiz and a test tomorrow. All right, sons, break out your book. He's like, my book? I'm supposed to keep that in my locker. We got to use the computer. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, this is just conditioning them to get sucked into a computer. And then when they get older, sucked into social media platforms, then to online dating, then to ChatGPT and all these other crazy IA things that we see that we laugh about and send our friends on social media, right? Those grandpa reels, all those baby ones, those are all AI generated, as we know. But the world is getting warmed up and used to that being the norm. That's what scares me.
So I don't know what the solution is. And, I'm not a parent. So this is just me like completely thinking as if I were. But when I see other people, friends of mine who have kids and, neighbors that have kids, even that are in high school and whatever, the ones that I would call like the normal ones. And again, that's just my observation. The normal ones, they're in activities. And they're playing sports or they're doing band or they're doing theater. So you're never going to rid kids of their screens. They're still going to be on it. But I do think, and I know that you talk about kind of like the impact of sports on young people and all this. And, there's a whole other rabbit hole to go down in that too, where there are problems, certainly. Sure. But I think like if you keep kids busy and they're doing things and like they have to interact, because like you got to play sports with other people and, you got to do like theater with other people and band and orchestra. I don't know. I think that might be one of the only ways to keep them around other people and off their phone. Because if they're busy doing something else, maybe they don't have as much time and energy to spend with the screen.
I agree. I got to tell you, the 3 kids, 2 daughters have gymnastics. One has it 2 days a week, and she's going to go into basketball soon. They do after school clubs. My youngest is in gymnastics 1 day a week. We're switching her to dance, and then she's going to do piano. My son plays soccer and baseball, and he does theater and drama club. We are doing everything we can as a married couple to keep them activities so they can interact with other people around adults they can trust and learn social skills and coping skills. Right? Because if you keep them inside on a computer screen, they'll never know how to understand bullying. They'll never understand how to filter out certain information. They have to be out there experiencing lives. So my wife and I, we choose to have a hectic week every single week so our children can grow to be well-adjusted, well-rounded, and dynamic human beings.
Yeah. None of this is going to be like a full solution, but I think there are definitely ways. Last thing I want to talk to you about in the last few minutes I have, just surrounding like the cultural moment that we're in right now. There's a lot of dark stuff happening, but I do think there are a lot of encouraging signs too. And this might sound funny, but I think to me, like watching Gen Z and even like the younger generations yearn for nostalgia, to me, that's like a good sign, even like this whole thing about Cracker Barrel, which seems kind of dumb. And in comparison to everything else this week, it seems dumb. But I think the people that are like, no, don't make all this stuff like this modern cookie cutter. Like I want like the nostalgic old school stuff. And when I see these ads, even from the American Eagle ad and then now Gap and Lucky Brand coming out with their own jeans ad, I look at it and it's like, wow, that looks like early 2000s nostalgia to me. People want that back, like the days of maybe just having like the flip phone. I think it's encouraging.
I agree. I did some commenting on the American Eagle ad and I enjoyed it. It was nostalgic, right? And I really love when people latch onto the nostalgia part of things because that means that they like tradition. And, whether it's IHOP, Bob Evans or Cracker Barrel, there's a reason why these people go to these restaurants. Like, I don't think it's because the food's great, right? I think it's because it resembles something or, triggers some happy memory within their childhood. So when people see those things change, that, it kind of makes them uneasy. They want stability. They want tradition. And, that kind of ties back into the American Eagle ad. It was a very traditional ad, but man, did it get loud?
Yeah. It's funny because when I talk to liberals, they are convinced that conservatives made that a thing. And I'm like, no, we literally wouldn't have taken a second look at it if the liberals weren't so outraged over it. They're like, no, that was a made up thing, that a conservative rage bait. Like, I wouldn't have watched
No.
that and thought anything of it. I wouldn't have been like, yeah, mega, that's what I saw. I would have been like, yeah, that's a jeans ad. I don't see things
Yeah.
through that lens, but they see everything kind of through that lens. And then they even now, like, they're like, people, you're outraged about Cracker Barrel. I was never outraged about Cracker Barrel. I was just like, this is a stupid decision. You know, it's better to
Yes.
be like, if your brand is like tradition and then you're going to go and sanitize it and make it boring, that's just a bad business move. But I think they made the right decision there. I'm hoping more will. Where can my audience go to hear and see more from you and have more of these discussions, hear some more stories that you have to share?
Well, thank you. You can find me at the Shawn French, SHAWN, on Instagram, the Determined Society on Spotify and Apple, and on YouTube. I appreciate it. And the website is just thedeterminedsociety.com.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Shawn. I hope to have you back. We can discuss many more things. There's a lot more that we have to contemplate and pontificate on. Have a fantastic Labor Day weekend, and I'll talk to you soon.
You too, my friend. Anytime.
Thank you. All right, folks, that does it for this Thursday special episode of Tomi Lahren is Fearless. Now, listen, we have a lot of these discussions about what goes on in Minneapolis and elsewhere. But first and foremost, again, our hearts continue to go out to the families in the community in Minneapolis. I know that we have to talk about the political landscape of a lot of this, but those families are what are most important. So although some demean thoughts and prayers, they're still very important to those people. So please continue to have and share those. Please also go to the YouTube channel at Tomi Lahren is Fearless. I'd really appreciate it if you like, comment, subscribe to that. From Nashville, God bless. Hey, thanks for watching. For more of my hottest takes, must-see conversations, and of course, my final thoughts, click right here. And don't forget to subscribe. Just click right here so you never miss a beat. I will be here every weekday, and I hope you'll join me.